Part 3. Contradictions, Partnerships and the Globalist Bankers.
Essex, along with 8 other county councils, have all scrapped, rescinded or paused their climate emergency declarations and net zero strategies. Norfolk, Suffolk and North Northamptonshire are reviewing cancelling theirs. Whatever your personal views on climate change, many authorities are concluding that these declarations have become expensive, legally risky and disconnected from what councils can realistically deliver. The IPCC has now said its most extreme scenario is not a plausible central forecast, and even Tony Blair has argued it is illogical for the UK, responsible for less than 1% of global emissions, to impose very high costs on its own businesses and consumers. Big institutional investors, BlackRock, Vanguard, HSBC, Asset Management and others have made huge profits from the net zero boom and are now withdrawing their investment. The Net Zero Banking Alliance had all 6 of the largest US banks quit, with major international lenders like HSBC and Barclays also exiting. If net zero was really necessary, would the world's largest investors really pull out of such a vital sector? Then look at the sheer policy contradiction. The government has designated data centres as critical national infrastructure to fast-track planning, even though this can override local grid capacity. The UK is currently second in the world for number of data centres, over 500. A single 100 megawatt facility consumes enough electricity for 80,000 homes. In the Thames Water region, data centres could account for nearly 30% of all new water demand, approximately 270 million litres per day.
Local government reorganisation. Facilitates. Stakeholder. Capitalism.
They're not going to allow any more brown eggs. They've got to be white eggs only, because apparently, God knows how they work this out, but I think white chickens are slightly smaller and they eat less, and they lay white eggs, and it will save, was it 12.5% carbon emissions or something ridiculous? She's the General Secretary of the Heritage Party, as many of you know, but also she's been the founder of the National Residents for Civic Accountability, NRCA for short. Anyway, she has extended her notices to include this, so our group now has a notice to serve to Sainsbury's. This was an unexpected area. I wasn't imagining. We're so used to serving notices to councils, although we are serving it to them as well. So I'm sure she won't mind if I read a little bit from it so that you can see the relevance to... So this is a formal notice: corporate net zero policy, British egg production, food security and agricultural supply chain risk. And it is going to Simon Roberts, the Chief Executive Officer of J. Sainsbury's plc, and also we're going to be sending it to all our local branches. Dear Mr. Roberts, we write further to public reports that Sainsbury's intends to phase out brown-shelled eggs from its own brand ranges and move to white-shelled eggs as part of its net zero and supply chain emissions strategy. Net zero and ESG frameworks must not be treated as if they are a binding statutory mandates capable of overriding food security, farmer viability or consumer choice. They are policy and reporting frameworks. They are not a and then it goes on about notice to ministers and blah blah. Conclusion. This is not a dispute about egg colour. It is a public interest notice about the restructuring of British food production under net zero and ESG metrics without sufficient transparency, accountability or assessment of real-world consequences. The National Residents for Civic Accountability will continue to document decisions by corporations.
They are looking forward to expanding their footprint, which basically means building lots of horrible tower blocks and solar panels and wind turbines all over farmland. This is what's going to happen in these areas, because this is the purpose of this, is to create these larger authorities which are then unaccountable to the people, put the decision making in the hands of a county mayor, in this case a mayor of Devon, that will, they plan that these mayors will be all allegiant to the World Economic Forum and Agenda 2030. And their plan is to get rid of farming as we know it. and turn the countryside into a hellhole of industrialization, create, with all these fake green energy projects, which make a lot of money for the people who get the government subsidies, but they don't create any energy when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. And of course, they take up land, which should be used for growing food.
We mention energy security. Well, what about food security? How come on this application we're worried about energy security when on the last ones, on the polytunnels, we weren't worried about food security? Because I could tell you what, we can do without energy, but we can't do without food.
Message for Chris Packham and your climate community. Cows are not the enemy. Community energy and carpooling is communism. NGOs and green careers are a gravy train. Children dangerously mining for cobalt are not for your virtue signalling status. Destroying our economy and carbon infrastructure for green credentials is not wise. Putting energy security before food security is deadly. Allowing funded activists into schools is creating anxiety. Believing computer modelling rather than evidence is ludicrous. And a belief in net zero is a fallacy.
And as you said, Michael, at the top of it, there are people who are actually satanic.
So, where does all this originate? This is Mark Windows, a renowned researcher, to explain.
Now, the hidden dangers of the rainbow gives a background for the start of the New Age infiltration of everything, including the Club of Rome, who brought about the idea that global warming would make humanity its own enemy. This came out of the first global revolution, which is the early 90s, which followed on from limits to growth. I think we talked about that in our midweek show. And the Club of Rome needed a new enemy, so the new enemy was going to be global warming, climate change, and we were all going to pay benefice and pay for our sins for breathing and become a cancer on the earth, and we would worship Mother Gaia, the earth, and there would be no need for any more wars because we are now worshipping the earth, and then we would accept population reduction. This is all part of what the New Age is about. But yes, very interesting stuff. We're also going to look into the Lucis Trust, which was founded by Alice Bailey. Of course, the Lucifer Trust, it changed its name. 1924, its action plan does mirror that of the UN and is working towards world government, one world currency and a universal credit system. Now, this is fascinating because this is what Alice Bailey actually wanted. Now, Blavatsky, Besant and Bailey were the precursors to what is going on now, to this UN-led global governance initiative, also known as the Sustainable Development Goals and United Nations Agenda 2030, which came out of Agenda 21 at the Rio Earth Summit of 1992. Rio Earth Summit was brought about by a billionaire person called Maurice Strong, who was actually an oil billionaire, along with Edmund Rothschild, who supplied the banking interests. Of course, all this is about the World Bank. So the New Age is basically all about where capitalism meets environmentalism through the World Bank. That's actually the intended outcome of it all.
If you just pass this to some globalist, climate crazy companies.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're a naughty boy or girl as well, you know.
Yeah. You're going to have a 1 shower per week. That was suggested. That was already suggested that we shouldn't wash our clothes.
Yeah, of course. Well, all the climate.
I went to Wales. As you know, we went to Wales for the conference in September, and we had a 1 towel in the room of 2. So when I asked the manager why we have a 1 towel, he said, people sharing towels. And I said, no way. And he said, this is sustainable, people sharing towels.
Sustainable, yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Sustainable for who? Should we leave it there?